Hey folks, before we start today's video, I just want to start with a quick little disclaimer. I'm going to make some big statements in this video, and some people are going to be offended, and that's okay. I would way rather be honest and truthful about what I see out there so that it can help you. So if that means offending a few people along the way, then hey, that's life. The second thing I want to address is that some people might say, hey Curtis, is everything you're saying now, does that mean that everything you wrote about in your book is now worthless? That's not the case at all. The techniques and marketing strategies I wrote about in my book are applicable in so many different contexts, even outside of just market gardening. So don't worry about that. Everything in my book is very relevant, just as much as it was when I wrote it. Just put it in a different context. But I am going to make some big statements about urban farming. And the other thing is, well, then why are you the urban farmer? Well, the only reason I'm the urban farmer is because that's how I started. When I first got into agriculture, I couldn't afford to buy land. I couldn't afford a home to even set up a home base on. I got into urban farming because that was the limiting factor that I was dealing with at that time. And through that presented many different opportunities. And that's often something that I found in life, is that limitations often provide opportunities. And that's what I've experienced. And so that's where it's at. That's all I wanted to say to you. Enjoy the video. Hey folks, I'm coming to you from the beginnings of my off-grid homestead. And I'm in the middle of nature. The only thing I can hear out here are birds. And that's about it. And it's beautiful. And I'm not coming to you from an urban environment despite the title of this video. But in this video, I want to talk to you guys about what my thoughts are on urban farming 10 years into it. And they've changed as people change. Before we get into it, I just wanted to address one thing that comes up a lot is people comment on how, what happened to Curtis's channel? He's not posting all the stuff that he used to post. And, that's because I've changed. And the times have changed. My views have changed. My skill set has changed. My life has changed. I'm a family man now. I have 2 kids. I've got my wife. And we've got an awesome little team that's crushing it through life. And our context has changed. And so my views have changed. And that's kind of how it is, If people don't want to come along for the ride, then that's fine. My channel is still called The Urban Farmer because what's the point of changing it? The vast majority of content that is up on YouTube, which is where this video will be. It'll also be at my membership site, fromthefield.tv, but this one is made for YouTube. And so there's no point in me changing the title of my channel because the majority of videos are about urban farming there. And so they're going to stay here. But I have changed, and a lot has changed in my life. I've got this 40-acre off-grid homestead that I'm going to be developing over this year, and I'll have more videos coming out about that soon. But in this one, I want to talk to you guys about what I think has changed and why urban farming is not exactly what it used to be. A lot has changed since I started making videos and farming. So I want to talk about that in this one. So I'm going to kind of go through some of the things that I talk about in my book that make urban farms great, and why some of those elements have changed in this new sort of rollout of a technocratic new world order that we're witnessing. And I think, I don't know, now I'll get to the point right away, is I wouldn't suggest people start urban farms right now, especially if you're in big cities like Vancouver, BC, Seattle, Los Angeles, San Diego, Chicago, New York, Atlanta. I wouldn't suggest starting an urban farm. I'll talk about some of the things that I think you could do. In fact, I have a video. If you want to go over to a video I did on BitChute, it's called How You Can Survive in the City if you're absolutely stuck there. You can go check that out. It was part of a live stream I did last week. But so let's go through. So there's kind of like 3 things that really give urban farms an advantage. And those are proximity to markets, visibility, and the heat island effect. And so let's talk about proximity to markets. So with urban farms, one of the greatest things about an urban farm is that the farm is in the city and people see it. So not only are you close to the market and many of your customers will come to you, they'll see the farm, they'll get excited about it, but you can deliver product really closely to where it's being consumed, and that's amazing. But this doesn't really have the same value anymore for one, or for two reasons really, two marketplaces really, is farmers markets and restaurants, which were big when I got into farming. That was like how I made most of my money, especially restaurants and then later grocery stores. Restaurants are closed. Restaurants are for the most part shut down by the tyrannical government. So there's no real advantage to being close to restaurants. Farmers markets have also vastly changed. It depends on the state you're in. If you're in a blue state, markets aren't what they used to be. Farmers markets, those markets were the best place to go to connect people in your community. But all these people wearing masks and social distancing, there's not a lot of community connection going on right now, folks. So those things no longer have the value that they did. So the proximity to market isn't really an advantage anymore, because most of those markets that I talked about at least are more or less shut down or vastly changed. And maybe there'll be a way to adapt to those changes. But, the greatest thing about an urban farm is the connection to the community. I mean, I can tell you, for 10 years on my farm, every time I was out in a lot of them were front yards, garden plots, people just walk by and they talk to you and they say, hey, this is amazing. And they become your friends and they become your biggest supporters and they buy stuff from you and they tell their friends. People aren't doing that anymore. People are terrified. People are terrified of catching an illness that has a 99.974% survival rate. They're really afraid of catching the seasonal flu or the cold. And they're wearing masks. They don't want to touch you. They don't want to come near you. How can you foster a community in an environment of fear like that? And I think that's a big part of why urban farms would no longer have that advantage. I've got some notes here, folks. You see me looking down. That's what I'm doing. And this also ties into the visibility. The visibility of the farm. The fact that people can see the farm means that people come by and say hello. They come and they check it out. The farm is an advertisement itself for the farm. That also builds in a lot of transparency for the farmers, which is good because it connects people to how farming works and how their farm should be grown or how their food should be grown. And that's a really cool synergistic thing that happens with the urban farmer and the people in the community. That visibility is worth a lot. Over the 20 different plots that I developed in the course of the 10 years that I ran my farm, Green City Acres, those plots that were most visible became the biggest advertisements for the farm, and they were the places that I met the most amount of people and built the most amount of goodwill in the community. But again, people aren't doing that. People are afraid. They're terrified. They don't even want to stop and say hello. It's insane. It's absolutely insane. But hey, this is the world we live in. So the farms don't really have the value with their proximity to market and their visibility as they did before. And so, why would you do that now? Cities are locked down. So what's the point? You can't, if you want to sell to people in the city, you can just bring product in. There's not a lot of advantage to being in the city, not to mention the fact that a lot of these cities, especially the really hard lefty ones, in the US, the blue states, are violent. You got groups like BLM and Antifa just smashing shit. So why would you want to be in the path of that, especially if you don't believe their sort of ideology? You're probably going to be a victim of their ideology. So why would you want to be there in the first place? Not to mention the fact that, the cities are so locked down that the amount of things you can do within the legal framework are getting less and less and less. These governments are kind of rolling out new regulations every day that diminish your ability to exist as a sovereign being on this land. And so why would you want to be a part of that? I'll talk more about that too, but there's not a lot of benefit to being visible. In fact, it could be a liability, especially if we move into times of scarcity. There is a lot of concern that we're going to be seeing food shortages. We've already been seeing some of those. A lot of farms are reporting that. There are disruptions in the supply chain, and there's disruptions in the growing season. We're We're seeing a lot of shortages, and we have for the last year. The other one was the heat island effect. Now, there's nothing really to say about that because that doesn't really change. No matter what the weather is, cities are warmer, so that advantage still remains. So there's nothing really to report on that one. But cities are becoming dangerous, and so I talked a little bit about that. I'll probably have a few more comments in my notes about this as well. But one of the challenges that a lot of urban farms face, and I have urban farmer friends around the world. I know some of the biggest and best in the industry. A lot of them probably don't agree with the things that I say these days, and that's okay. But a big challenge that urban farms have is actually building a team. Finding the right people to manage and operate the farm so that the owner of that farm can free themselves up to do other things, perhaps expand the operation, teach people on the farm. These are all great things, and one of the greatest things urban farms have ties into that visibility, is that they become educational hubs where people see agriculture and then they go, oh wow, this is how it works, because most people have no idea where their food comes from and how it's grown. And so urban farms have a massive role to play in this sort of the social piece, and that's I've said that for years, but that no longer exists. How can you run workshops on your farm if everybody's afraid of social distance? If everybody wants a social distance and wear masks, you can't interact and engage with people when everybody's terrified. And so urban farms are kind of screwed that way. But going back to building a team, one thing I've observed over the years with urban farms is that, cities are predominantly liberal, especially the bigger ones. The bigger the city, the more liberal it is. And that kind of ties into politics. And I hate to play the left-right false dichotomy because I don't believe in it. But I do observe these things, and that cities that are more liberal have more liberal attitudes. And so one of the liberal attitudes you get in the city is the sort of attitude of entitlement. And there's a lot of reasons for that. Cities have a lot of, in order for a city to function properly, it has a lot of public infrastructure that people depend on day to day. So people in cities often have a different view of the government and their role in their lives than people in the country. Because people in the country, have to take responsibility for themselves in many ways. They produce their own energy. They got to fix things. They got to grow their own food. They have to defend themselves because, police have far less presence in the country. And so there is this sort of rural and urban divide when it comes to a view of the government, for better or worse. But it's just the reality. And with that comes an attitude of entitlement. And my theory is why urban farms can't really find good full-time people to manage their operations is because they think the world owes them a living. And I'm sorry if people are offended by that. You can unsubscribe right now. You can dislike this video, whatever. I don't give a shit. But that's just the reality. And when you have a labor pool of people that are really entitled to showing up and getting a living wage, I want $15 an hour to start, despite the fact that I have no skills and probably can't even create that much value on your farm, you must pay me this. Those attitudes exist in cities and they don't really exist in the country. As somebody who's lived in big cities for many years, now who lives in the country, and I've traveled around the world and experienced the same things and seen them, I can tell you that that's the reality. That's how it is. So it's hard to build a good team in the cities. So again, where's the value if people have those types of attitudes? Another thing about cities that makes them not good candidates any longer is that cities are toxic. They're toxic in so many different ways. You're getting barraged with electromagnetic frequencies, pollution, not to mention all the bad attitude of people in the cities, the fear, right? And all these things manifest themselves with more people. So the higher concentration of people and the more afraid they are, the more afraid that concentration of fear is. That's what I've experienced and seen. So why would you want to be there? Everybody's freaked out, stressed out. Why would you want to be near that energy? There's just no appeal to it. People in the cities, like I said, how their view on the role of government is so different than people in the country that they often believe a lot of the bullshit that the government and media tell them. So every time there's an update about, some new cases, we got cases. Everybody's taking the PCR test, which is 94% false positives. Every time there's an update about new cases, not people dying, not part of a real pandemic, just a case-demic, people are terrified. And so you can see this on the street. So why would you want to subject yourself to that toxic soup? Whether it be physical, mental, or spiritual, it's toxic. And one thing that's happening in the cities right now, and has been happening for a while, and is going to accelerate as we move forward into this case-demic, scandemic, fraud-demic, whatever you want to call it, is that cities are going to experience a brain drain. And that, if you don't know what that term means, it's actually what happens in poor countries, and has happened for a long time, is that when a country becomes sort of unlivable, countries in South America have been experiencing this for a long time. A place like Mexico has been really experiencing this. Is that when it no longer becomes nice to live there, the people who have resources and intelligence and skills that are valuable somewhere else will just move there. So people vote with their feet, folks. That's just a hard reality. And as cities become more locked down, more tyrannical, more fear-based, more toxic, the people who have resources and options are just going to say, why would I stay here? I can do most of my work online anyways. Why would I stay in this? Why would you live in New York City when there's a curfew? Very little personal freedom. You can't enjoy any of the things that the city has to offer, the culture, the restaurants, the live music events. Those are things that I really value about a city. Well, they're no longer there, so why the hell would you stay there? So cities are going to continue to become more and more equated to the lowest common denominator. So all the people with talent and resources are going to leave, and all the people who don't have the options will stay there. And so I'm not trying to say that people who don't have those resources are less valuable. It doesn't. That's not the point. The point is that the people that do will leave. So what are you going to be left with? And that means that the cities will become more and more of a downward spiral, because all the people with talent are leaving, more tyranny imposed, more fear imposed, more toxicity. A lot of these cities are getting decked out with 5G. So you're going to have more and more of a toxic soup to live in. And whether you believe me or not, or you call me a tinfoil hatter, I don't care. But that's the reality. At least for those that are awake, we see this. And so that's who I'm speaking to, guys. If you're offended by some of the things that I'm saying, just please unsubscribe from my channel. You don't have to watch this stuff. Just go with your clan and take the vaccine. Please take the vaccine. I think the people who want to take the vaccine should take the vaccine, and I think that will free this world up a little bit more for those of us who will not, myself included in some of those. So just looking at my notes here, that's really what it is. This city, all in all, the city has far less appeal than it did before. And I can tell you, I don't bring this news to you happily. I got into urban farming mostly because it's all I had the ability to do when I first started farming. I came from no money. I had student debt. I pursued a degree in music composition, which at this juncture, has very little value, but it's what I was pursuing and what I was passionate about at that time. Moved to Montreal, lived there for almost 10 years. And did all that, and everything that I believed in with the city is the culture, the experience. I love a diversity of people. I love going out for Ethiopian food one night, Indian food the next night, Portuguese food the next night. I love that about a city. I really do. But that stuff's gone now, and it's not going to change, guys. It's not going to change. This is going to get worse and worse. We are in an absolute downward spiral. I think there's a lot of big picture things here, which we don't need to get into here, but the reality is they're in a downward spiral. Cities are unsustainable. Cities are like a virus that just needs resources. And this is I heard Zach Bush articulate it this way, and I thought it was brilliant. And just how unsustainable cities are on so many fronts, resource-wise, food-wise, culture-wise. They're so unsustainable. And they're like a virus that just needs more and more resources, and all those highways are just feeding those resources to them. And I think fundamentally we're witnessing the the showcase or the exposing of how unsustainable cities are. You know, human beings have not been living in cities for very long. In our whole lineage of how long we've been alive on this planet, cities are not very old. And we're discovering how unsustainable they are now. And especially through this case-demic, you're going to see that's not going to change. It's going to get worse and worse and worse. So the question is, how much do you want to put up with until you decide to pick up and leave? So at this juncture, I would say, if somebody asked me, hey, Curtis, should I start an urban farm in the city of Chicago or New York or Vancouver? I would say no. No, because I want the best for people. And I don't want people to suffer. I want people to find liberation. I want people to regenerate the soil, regenerate themselves, regenerate our communities, build our families. I really believe in the sovereignty of the human mind, body, and spirit. And I don't think living in a city is the path of least resistance to achieve that. I think living in the country, where we have more resources so we can actually connect with the land on a deeper level, is more of the path that I would suggest. It's what I'm doing. And if you want to follow along with me on this journey, I'm documenting everything I'm doing on this piece of land here. We've got 40 acres. We're off-grid. We're capturing our own water. We're harvesting our own resources to heat our home. And we're building a huge passive solar home. We're building a 1 acre vegetable garden with food forests and everything that's awesome about permaculture. I'm going to be implementing on this. I'm going to be spending a lot of money to do this. It's taken me many years to be able to be in a position where I have the resources and the time that I can do this kind of thing. And I have a lot of you who've supported me over the years to thank for that. So thank you for coming along with me on this journey for so many years. But those are my thoughts on urban farming. Please feel free to leave your comments down below. And subscribe to FromTheField.tv, because that's where I put 99% of my content these days. All of my journey here will be exclusively posted there with all the details, because I've got a lot of people helping me on this journey. I've got an architect I'm working with right now. I've got a team of builders that I'm going to be building my home and the passive solar greenhouse. I've got an excavation crew that's going to be doing our terracing. All kinds of people coming into the fold in this project, including the 15 kilowatt solar array we're putting in here. A lot of people are going to be involved in what we're doing, and I'm going to be showcasing all of that this year at FromTheField.tv, and you're going to see this whole thing unfold. It's the greatest project I've ever participated in on the land, and it's taken me 10 years to get to a point where I could do it. So this is it. This is going to be a big year. 2020 was a fantastic year for myself and many I know. I think 2020, it's ironic that it was called 2020, because I think a lot was revealed then. And I think this year, 2021, is all about accountability, responsibility, regeneration, and renewal, and reconciliation. Taking responsibility for what has been done to ourselves, this planet, and taking responsibility and moving forward. And we create the world that we want to see. We don't get it from corporations. We don't get it from this corporate system of subjugation. It's time that we transcend that and move into a new era of regeneration. And I'm part of that, and I hope that I can inspire many of you to do the same. And I wish you well in 2021, and I'll see you in the next video.